So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Virginia Poverty Law Center's crossover coffee and chat. I'm Tony Maxey, the Virginia Poverty Law Center's Development Director, and I'm so happy to be here with you this morning to talk about the work that Virginia Poverty Law Center has been doing at the General Assembly up to the point yesterday when everything crossed over. I just want to go over a few housekeeping items before I turn it over to Jay Spear, our Executive Director. As you noticed, this is being recorded, and the chat will be on our YouTube page within the next 24 hours. Additionally, any resources or links mentioned in today's discussion or placed into the chat, will be, my apologies, will be emailed through, will be emailed by Ezra Halstead, who's on the chat, within the next 24 hours. Feel free to put any questions you have in the chat. We'll come back at the end to answer those questions. I'm now going to put myself on mute and turn it over to Jay. I say it.
Thanks, Tony. And I'm at the office, so I don't have my dogs here, so I don't have that problem. Thanks, everybody, for coming. This is our crossover update. As most of you probably know, crossover means that the House had to finish all its bills by yesterday, and the Senate the same. And that leads to what happens is, for those of you that don't know, the House and the Senate have these long floor sessions to deal with all the bills that have come through committee and have all sort of backed up. And the House actually met for 12 hours on Monday, I believe. So they have some sort of these marathon sessions. But the one thing that's still to come is the budget, and that comes out on Sunday, I think, unless I have that wrong. But and the way that works is that the House gets its budget and the Senate does its budget. They each vote and pass it, and then it crosses over, then they each reject it, and then there's the negotiations happen with the folks appointed by the Senate and the House, usually something like 8 people. And after a while, you hope that they will come up with something that both sides will agree to. But in past years, if past years are any indication, we got a long way to go on the budget, I imagine. A couple of things in my update, I'm going to use some different terms about bills. We may say a bill has been defeated, which of course that means it's either didn't pass in committee or didn't pass on the floor. Sometimes we may say it was laid on the table or passed by indefinitely, which is basically the same thing as saying it's been defeated, just sort of different terms that they use. The one thing that's a little bit different is sometimes a bill is carried over, which means that it's still live if the committee takes action on it by next, I think, December usually. For the most part, that usually means the bill's dead, but not always. It tends to mean that the committee looks at it as something maybe that needs to be worked on and brought back next year. So Ezra, you can go to the next slide. So we do have a couple of things, budget items that we're still hoping people will take action on. We've done a few action alerts this year and had some pretty good success. Probably over 200 people, I think, have taken action, and it makes a big difference when your legislator starts getting messages about different bills. There's so many bills and budget items. It's hard for them to know what to focus on, but they tend to focus on things that they're hearing about. And these are the two things that we would like you to take action on. We've already done action alerts on these. I think we're going to send these slides out later, and I think there's a link there to get to these if you click on, for instance, the foster care one, it'll help you. We make it really easy for you to just fill in your name and it goes to the right place. And these are also, if for some reason the links don't work, this is on our website. And the two things here are the support the pilot parent representation centers. These are budget amendments put in on the Senate side by Senator Edwards and on the House side by Delegate Kilgore. It creates pilot parent representation centers for parents involved in foster care proceedings. And then the second one is our initiative called Our Home, or the Restorative Home Ownership Pilot Program. As we said on our website, it rectifies some Virginians' inability to access and build wealth through home ownership due to past discriminatory government policies like redlining, race-restricted deeds, and urban renewal projects that destroyed certain neighborhoods. This particular program, if it's funded, will provide first-time homeowners down payment assistance, connection to credit repair and homeownership counseling, and funding to address deferred maintenance and improve energy efficiency. So help us out and take action on these two budget items. Next. Okay, so the first items we're going to talk about are under the Center for Economic Justice. Next. So this is under affordable energy. This is one of those bills that was continued. In other words, it wasn't outright defeated, but I think there's some interest in this in the Commerce and Energy Committee in the House. It would lower upcoming electric utility costs through better regulatory tools, just sort of an ongoing fight, which VPLC has been in on for several years. Our interest in all these things is just to protect the consumers and try to keep the costs low for utilities. Next. This bill passed the Senate, Senator Lewis's bill. We work with Senator Lewis and industry representatives to make sure that this avoided higher than necessary water bills for customers by the State Corporation Commission. So we proposed a lot of language in this, and which was put in. It's passed the Senate. Now it's going over to the House. Next. Consumer rights. So this has become kind of a big issue. I mean, it's a lot of stuff. They had like 3 or 4 articles written about this, surprisingly. Senator Hashmi's bill passed the Senate, but Delegate Carr's bill was laid on the table, but there's still some hope that, well, what this is about is it prevents public universities from withholding transcripts from students who owe a debt to the university. I was really shocked to find out this was impacting as many as 58,000 former students. And as I said, Senator Hashmi's bill passed. Delegate Carr's bill was laid on the table, but there's some hope that there's going to be something put in the budget to have a study done of how the universities are collecting these debts. Next. So this bill is just kind of interesting. Delegate Davis put this bill in, and it was watered down a little bit, but it would require that consumers be provided a conspicuous online option to cancel a recurring purchase of a good or service within a website by which the purchase was made. If you've ever had this happen to you, where you signed up for something and then you couldn't get out of it, which has happened to a lot of people, and what the most annoying part about this sometimes is that you sign up online and then they make you call a phone number that nobody answers to try to cancel it. And the bill is trying to fix that particular issue. And it's passed the House, now it's going to the Senate. Yes, next one. Another consumer rights bill. This was something that I thought would easily pass. I was really surprised. It's Senator Deed's bill did pass the Senate with some bipartisan support, but Delegate Hudson's bill was defeated in the House. It's just that there's already an existing policy that a debt collector cannot harass someone for a medical debt while their claim is being considered by the Criminal Injuries Compensation Fund. And all this does is put in an enforcement mechanism because of situation we found about where someone was being harassed that was waiting on help from the victims fund. And like, I'm not quite sure what the problem is, why this didn't pass easily, but there it is. Next. And then the Consumer Data Protection Act was a bill passed, I guess last year. It hasn't gone into effect yet. It goes into effect on January 1st. It has to do with people's control over their own data. And Delegate Weber had a bill in this year that passed the House, which is basically trying to make some changes to the law that passed last year. We've been involved in trying to maintain our consumers' rights to prevent dissemination of their own data. If you wonder what this is all about, I mean, data has become a very important and tool to a lot of companies, and they're using our data. They're not compensating us for it, and we seem to have lost control over how they use it. A real example would be if you're on Facebook and you look at an ad online, and then all of a sudden you start seeing all these ads for whatever you looked at. Well, that's what's going on if they've grabbed your data and disseminated it. And so that's what this. We don't really like the Consumer Data Protection Act that was passed last year because while it sounds like a good thing, they unfortunately, I think it was written mostly by companies that want to use your data, and they didn't put very many protections in there. So whenever this legislation comes up, we get involved to try to make sure that consumers are protected as best we can. Next. Now, under housing, Senator Evans' bill was continued to 2023. This was we consider to be an important bill to establish a warrant of habitability defense, allowing tenants to raise bad conditions. As the landlord has refused to repair as a defense to eviction. We do have a process in Virginia. If your landlord won't fix things, you can pay your rent into court, but it's not an easy process. It's very intimidating for tenants. This is, we consider, a much better way. A lot of states do this, but unfortunately, the Senate did not pass this. But we will continue to work on this. Next. Under how these bills passed both the Senate and the House and are passing over or crossing over. This would ensure fair access to appeals in eviction case and allow the court. So in other words, if a tenant loses in general district court and doesn't have the money to pay the fees to appeal, then you can go through a process where they don't have to pay the fees. And it's the same with every other civil case. It's just that only evictions, you've not been able to do this. So this is a good step forward and to bring eviction appeals on the same level as any other kind of appeal. Next. Another housing bill, Delegate Price's bill, passed the House. This would allow community enforcement of health and safety rental housing laws to help tenants who live in unsafe or unhealthy conditions. There's been a lot of talk about this in the news. There's particularly in the Richmond area, there's apartments on the South Side that are not fixing things. And it was a subject of a lot of good press. And then the Virginia Attorney General's office started investigating for fair housing violations. We're not quite sure where that's going on, but that's the kind of thing we're trying to address here. Again, another way to try to force bad landlords, which is a very, very, very small percentage of landlords. But there are those landlords out there and they're really taking advantage of people, and we need to try to force them to comply with health and safety standards. Next. And then this bill was defeated. This is really disappointing. This was a good change was made during the pandemic to change pay or quit notices from 5 days to 14 days. What this means is if you haven't paid your rent, the landlord has to send you a pay or quit notice saying you either pay your rent or you have to leave. And if you don't pay, then they can start the eviction process. And a good change was made to change from 5 days to 14 days. because the whole point of that was to, if you haven't paid your rent, you're not likely to be able to come up with the money in 5 days, but in 14 days, maybe, because you might get paid or something. So it's but unfortunately this bill did not pass, so we're going to go back to the 5-day pay or quit, I believe, on July 1st. Next. So the center, next is the Center for Family Advocacy. Next. This is a bill that we don't like, Senate Bill 174 by Senator Peake. It passed the Senate. We will be working to defeat this in the House. We oppose this because it discourages victims from seeking safety, and it could jeopardize VAWA from, that's the federal funds for victim serving agencies in Virginia. So we think this is a huge mistake. We think the Senate made a big mistake passing this, and we're hoping the House will defeat it. Next. This is a bill that we were able, not just us, but other folks, Delegate Davis's bill was defeated. This kind of comes up every year. There's always sort of this competing thing where parents' rights groups seem to think that their rights are more important than the child's. And I mean, every year, almost every single year I've worked in legislature, something like this comes up. And so it's, the folks that understand how this process works all know that this is not the way to go. And once again, this bill is defeated. Next. This is a good bill that Senator McClellan put in that passed the Senate. It would strengthen protections against workplace discrimination. It sort of it changes, who's subject to the bill. I think the current law says you have to have 15 employees. I think this lowers that to 5 employees to try to cover more employers. And there's some other changes which are good. We obviously need to strengthen protections against workplace discrimination. Next. So under family and child welfare, Delegate Wampler has a bill that passed the House. This would direct the Department of Social Services to establish and implement a collaborative local placement program to increase kinship placements and the number of locally approved foster homes. And we're trying, for many years, we have tried to work to keep kids out of foster care and improve things for kids in foster care. And this is that's why we support this bill. Next. House Bill 716 passed the House, would establish a procedure so that the child's relative can apply to become the child's kinship foster parent, including a right to appeal a negative decision. This is a pretty big step, I think, but it's been shown over and over again in studies that sometimes kids are put in foster care and they really could have been placed with family, especially some other family member, especially if that other family member had some sort of support. On a lot of these bills, I'm not overly knowledgeable about, but I do need to try to give you an overview of all these things. You can get more detail. If you stay on the call afterwards, we have a lot of our experts here, so you can ask more detailed questions if you like. Next. All right, the Center for Healthy Communities. Another bill by Delegate Carr was continued to 2023. I believe this makes 18 years in a row the General Assembly has refused to do anything about nursing home residents not having enough, nursing homes not having enough staff to properly care for their residents. And despite a study from, I think JLAR, Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission, saying that a lot of changes need to be made, such as this, once again, the legislature refused to do it. Next. Senate Bill 40, Senate Spruill, passed the Senate. This is, I think, a big step forward too. Right now, if you live in an assisted living facility, which is not a nursing home, but it's a lower level of care for some folks who can't live independently, and this this bill would protect them from arbitrary eviction. So, because it's, obviously sometimes when you live in one of these assisted living facilities, and again, this isn't most of them, but there's a very small percentage that, the person running the place doesn't like you and they just put you out, or maybe they think you are too much trouble or something, they put you out. So there needs to be some protections in place for these folks. Next. And House Bill 623, Delegate Hudson, this did pass the House. There was also a study, a JLARC study about guardianship. And so this would improve the court process for imposing guardianship over adults. It's basically, it's some of the things that were recommended in the JLARC study about the court process. And, when you want to get a guardianship over an adult, you have to petition the circuit court, and a person called a guardian ad litem is appointed, a lawyer whose job it is to look out for what's in the best interest of the person over whom they're proposing a guardianship. And what the legislation does is sort of impose some duties on that guardian ad litem, including, I think, you're supposed to look at whether you shouldn't always have a total guardianship. Sometimes you can have a partial guardianship and only give the guardian limited things that they have the right to control. Next. This is a health insurance bill. House Bill 1221, Delegate Tran was defeated. It would have required every hospital subject to Title VI to make available information about the hospital's charity care policies more accessible to non-English speakers. But unfortunately, that was defeated.
Hey, Jay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Delegate Tran was actually able to get this language on the floor incorporated into her HB 1071, which is another medical debt bill. So it is alive in a different form at the moment. So it was laid on the table and then kind of incorporated into another bill, so brought back to life.
Oh, good. All right. Thanks, Sarah. Next. Another health insurance bill, which we thought was really important. It would establish a program that ensures access to health insurance for all children who call Virginia home, regardless of immigration status. And this was a lot of kids. I can't remember how many, but unfortunately, Delegate Tran's bill was defeated and Senator McClellan's bill was continued. Next. Under public benefits, House Bill 1270, Delegate Sickles did pass the House. Would increase access to SNAP or food stamps, as a lot of people. And Sarah just put in the chat that under that previous slide, 13,000 children were covered by that. Somebody keeps trying to call me. All right. But the Senator Delegate Sickles' bill would increase access to SNAP by allowing incarcerated individuals to apply for SNAP prior to the release so that they have access upon release. So I think it's a common sense measure. Next. And then another bill by Delegate Sickles was defeated, would have strengthened cash assistance for children living in poverty by repealing what's called the full family sanction, which takes away assistance to the entire family if the parent doesn't meet the TANF's work or other requirements. In other words, penalizing children for something that they didn't do. Next. And then I think this is our last slide, language access. Senator Hashmi's bill did pass the Senate, and Delegate Tran's bill was defeated. It would require state agencies to make services available to all Virginians, regardless of language barriers or disabilities that affect communication. Something that we consider to be very important. There's a lot more detail to this, obviously, but that's the gist of it. And I think next, I think that's it. Yeah, thank you. So we have 5 minutes for questions, and of course people could stay on afterwards as well. So Tony, I think you're the.
I am. And we have a couple questions here in the chat. Again, if you have questions, please do put that in the chat. And just very quickly, Salam, who is VPLC's public benefits attorney and newly hire deputy director. For SNAP, the pre-registration for returning citizens would help an estimated 12,679 people. But, and this may be a question for Christy, but which members of the House Appropriations Committee are in support of our home? And are there any members who really need to hear from us?
To be quite candid, I don't know if any members of the House are in support of our home. Our strategy on this, we know that I think every member of, or at least all but one member of the Senate subcommittee on economic development has at some time or another expressed their support of our home to me. So I feel pretty good about it getting into the Senate budget. I could be wrong. I've been wrong many times before, as you all know. I would say in the House, nobody has said anything negative. I've talked directly to 3 of the key members of that subcommittee it's Danny Marshall's subcommittee. So that's Danny Marshall, Will Wampler, and Delegate Bloxham, and David Bulva, I'm sorry, 4 key members. But I don't have any intel on what's happening in the House. So that said, if you want to contact House members, I would say focus on the same 3, Delegate Wampler, Delegate Wampler, Delegate Bloxham, and Delegate Marshall. And it doesn't hurt to send Senators Barker, Hanger, Marsden, and Howell, and Ruff emails also expressing your support of our home, just to make them feel even more compelled. Hopefully they already feel compelled to put it in the Senate budget.
Thanks, Christy. And Salam, this one may be for you, but John's asked, what's the interpretation from the budget as follows? TANF forecast provides GF for TANF activities in order to prevent a structural deficit, also reduces some TANF activities. My assumption is it's reducing by 16.9 million.
Hey, good morning, everybody. And just to provide context to that, the phrase in quotations, GF does not stand for girlfriend. It stands for general fund. That's the state money. So the TANF block grant is being used at an increased amount versus how much is coming from the federal government. So we are going to be at a deficit within a few years based on the increases in the TANF cash assistance amount, plus all the other projects and all the other organizations that are using the TANF funds. So we are in for a deficit in the future. And so the governor's budget is planning for that and adjusting funds as a result. Our goal is to make sure the primary purpose is, of course, actual and realized. And that primary purpose is getting the cash to the families and also getting our previous TANF increases into the budget as well. So you may remember last year we had, or over the past couple of years, we had historic increases to the TANF cash assistance amount by 15% and 10%. And then we were supposed to get automatic 10% increases every year until it was to matching the 50% of the federal poverty line. And so I thought my work was done. But this year, the governor did not put that 10% increase in. It is essentially an unfunded mandate. The language is there for DSS to plan for that increase. So because of the deficit because of the projected deficit, that 10% increase was not funded. So the work ahead is to make sure we can start decreasing the funding for other organizations that are using TANF and other projects that are using TANF or dipping their hands into it so that we can get those 10% increases back. And we also have budget amendments in this year to get that 10% increase in this year and next year.
And this may go with that same question, Salam, and that John in the comments placed that Senate Bill 1158 partial TANF sanction was defeated, but that there's still a budget amendment 341 for H, and can the BA do the job?
Yeah, so it was a HB. It was a House bill from Delegate Sickles that Jay mentioned earlier. There is no Senate companion. There is a budget amendment on the Senate side. So that's going to be our way of attempting to do it through the budget.
Thanks. Don't see any other questions at this time, and if I've missed one, please feel free to unmute yourself and say so. But I do want to just read a couple items from VPLC's lobbyists that provided some clarification on a few of the slides, that the JLARC and nursing home study, that the JCHC, that actually stands for the Joint Commission on Healthcare. They did the nursing home study, and then JLARC did the guardianship study. And then Emily Hardy, who is our elder law attorney, mentions that Senate Bill 40, the ALF discharge hearing bill, had a companion bill which was laid on the table in HHR appropriations. So if anybody is not aware what those acronyms stand for, please let me know, and she can define those acronyms in the chat. So we need people, Emily needs people to contact the Republican members of HHR appropriations to urge the importance of creating basic due process. The bill came out of the Senate 39-1. So there was bipartisan support on the other side, as well as bipartisan support at the lower levels on the House side, 20-2, and all the appropriation R's voted to table it. Emily, would you like to say a little bit about who might be on that committee and who you may wish to have people contact?
Sure. So it's the Health and Human Resources Appropriation Committee, and it's Delegate Wampler, Coiner, Brewer, Hodges, and Ferris. I think that's, yeah, so that's the 5 Republicans who voted at appropriations to table it. And that also happened with all of the guardianship, JLARC guardianship bills, which came out of the Senate and passed appropriations, but on the House side, everything with money attached to it from the guardianship JLARC study was also tabled in that same committee. So they were apparently instructed to table all of the bills with income attached to it. So we're just looking for people to contact and support those bills, and specifically the ALF discharge hearing bill, which we think is really important. So those are the delegates that are on that. The Democrats all voted for it. So we're just looking for people to reach out and urge that the House change its mind.
Thanks, Emily. And as Jay referenced at the beginning, we do attempt to keep our coffee chats to a half an hour. And that is a promise that we make. So it's right after the 9:30 hour, actually ticking 5 minutes past. So if you need to leave, please do so. However, we will stay if there are other questions or comments needed. And John is asking who to target for budget amendments besides the money committee. Does anybody want to take that?
I don't think you need to target anybody who isn't on the money committee.
Fantastic. And we'll follow up with Emily and Christy to get the names of the delegates and senators that they're asking you to contact, so that it's in the email that you received from Ezra.
I think we're going to probably put together an action alert for that to make it easier for people. That's
There
the way.
you go. There you go. And speaking of action alerts, Monica in the chat has placed a few resources. Again, those will be in the email that Ezra sends out. So are there any other questions?
One question, I'm sorry, I cannot access the chat.
Go ahead, Kenneth.
On the 14-day pay or quit, is there a chance that that can be tacked on to some other bill in the Senate, since it obviously didn't do very well in the House?
Chrissy, if you'll unmute.
No, I mean, we had a really hard time getting that through the Senate to begin with, in all of the previous sessions. So no, I don't see that as the play. I mean, I think we just need to live with it until we have an election and different compositions in the House and Senate, which we will certainly have with redistricting, if nothing else. And then we'll go back in. But I think we need to be mindful of that, mindful of the history, and a little bit more creative next session about other ways to help tenants pay their rent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kenneth. So I do want to thank everyone who has taken action on the alerts. As you've heard, it is important for our legislators to hear from us on these issues. So please continue to watch out for action alerts from us. And if there's nothing else, I'll just thank everyone for joining us this morning and have a wonderful day.
You
Bye,
like
everyone.
one. Bye.